Hello and welcome to India Reads. I'm Pradeep and we are reading The Accidental Prime Minister. We are in chapter number 8 Promises to Keep. We want India to shine, but India must shine for all. From the first National Press Conference, 4th September 2004. Even before he was named head of the UPA government, Dr. Singh was asked by Sonia to address the media and calm the stock market down. The BSE Sensex had gone into a tailspin after it was announced that the Congress would form a government with the support of the left. It was left to Dr. Singh to calm investors' nerves. Fortunately, his track record in the 1990s reassured investors at home and abroad. The Vajpayee government had ended its term on a high note with upwards of 8% growth in the final year, fueled by massive expansion of investment in infrastructure and bequeathed to its successor an economy in reasonably good shape. It was economic optimism that prompted the NDA Finance Minister Jaswant Singh's famous India Shining campaign aimed at promoting India internationally as an investment destination. Growth rates were going up, inflation was low, surplus in the capital account was being registered for the first time in years. The last indicator was a vote of confidence from a global community that viewed BJP with skepticism when it conducted nuclear tests in 1998. The challenge for UPA was to address the grievances of farmers, especially in southern India, reassure investors, and make the growth process socially inclusive. In setting out the government's agenda through his first Independence Day address, Dr. Singh emphasized that the government's plans and priorities had been defined by three statements: the NCMP, the President's address to the Parliament, and the Finance Minister's budget speech. The reference to all three statements was significant. It was meant to emphasize the fact that policy agenda of the government was not defined by the NCMP alone, but by what the president said in the parliament. This was a written speech by the PMO the case in which this case meant B, and what the finance minister said in his budget. What the PM was implicitly telling the nation was that NCMP would not become a straight jacket but would be interpreted through the government's policy statements. The NCMP had been hurriedly drafted by Sitaram Yechuri and Jairam Ramesh to enable the left to work with the Congress. It was not a carefully thought through manifesto. Dr. Singh was understandably not fully satisfied with the NCMP. He thought that the Congress made too many concessions to the left in desperation to secure support. He was concerned that both the left and many in the Congress would expect a delivery on all promises and that this might be a tough task for the government. The party seemed to have taken the easy way out, saying yes to words in print and imagining that the government would not be constrained by them in action. Having lived through a nightmare of 91-92, namely the economic mess that confronted Narasimha Rao government, and having handled early economic crisis, one of Dr. Singh's favorite English proverbs was that money does not grow on trees. He believed that the NCMP's fiscal commitments and there were many promises of the subsidies and new schemes would prove to be unsustainable. This belief lay behind the more cautious tone of what was possible and doable in the President's address and the Finance Minister's budget speech. Also, by emphasizing the relevance of the budget speech to the government policy, he was giving the government the option to define policy from time to time rather than being constrained by commitments made on paper on an eager night. This did not mean Dr. Singh did not believe in the fundamental policies underlying the NCMP. Indeed, he did. He had long conceded that as a finance minister, he had not done enough for health and education, and that these would be his priorities as PM. He also recognized the NDA's defeat, especially that of Chandrababu Naidu and his Telugu Desam party in Andhra Pradesh, was because of the neglect of agriculture and rural development, and that the UPA had to focus on. He was among the first to criticize the BJP's India Shining campaign when it rolled out in the run up to 2004 elections. For several months before that, Sonia and he sat through long discussion with social scientists and civil society activists to try and understand the issues they saw as priorities for policy action. The view often purviewed by Dr. Singh's critics and Sonia's admirers that he was a late convert to her way of thinking about social policy was just not true. The concerns expressed in the NCMP were uppermost in Dr. Singh's mind and were reflected in the first Independence Day address, where he spoke of a new deal for rural India and the Sat Sutra, seven priorities of the UPA, namely agriculture, water, education, healthcare, employment, urban renewal, and infrastructure. This address was carefully drafted by him. These seven priorities are the pillars for the development bridge we must cross to ensure higher economic growth, and more equitable social and economic development. Dr. Singh told the country from the ramparts of the Red Fort. The Sat Sutra set the policy framework for the government and yielded what came to be known as UPA's flagship programs: Bharat Nirman, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Road Renewal Mission, National Rural Health Mission, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, the expanded midday meal program. While the NCA played an important role in developing the government's thinking on some of these programs, the PMO2 uh, played a key role in drawing up the required legislation and in working out how these programs would be implemented. The perception that all UPA's progressive social policies came out of the NAC while the PMO was only preoccupied with economic growth and liberalization was false. This was a caricature that many in the Congress party, the left, and the media liked to draw. Much as I wanted him to, Dr. Singh was never keen on politically challenging such propaganda. His usual response whenever I suggested that we respond to such comments would be, let my actions speak for me. Bharat Nirman, the flagship rural infrastructure development program, for example, was entirely conceived in the PMO at the initiative of the late R. Gopalakrishnan, a joint secretary in the PMO. Gopalakrishnan had ground level experience in development from his tenure in Madhya Pradesh, where he had served as a secretary to Vijaya Singh through his two terms as chief minister of the state. A highly motivated, intellectual, curious, and energetic civil servant, he would never allow himself to be constrained by bureaucratic red tape and rigidity. He was inspired by his business guru C.K. Prahlad's thesis about the business potential of those at the bottom of the pyramid. He believed that public investment in rural development would generate a virtuous cycle of win win outcomes, provided such spending generated new incomes and new employment. Bharat Darban was conceptualized as a business plan for rural infrastructure rather than as a new subsidy program. The program sought to bring together existing schemes for rural housing, rural roads, rural electrification, drinking water and irrigation, and rural telecommunication. When Gopalakrishnan made his initial PowerPoint presentations to the PM on the scheme, there was enormous excitement in the room. This was a kind of growth oriented and employment generating program that Dr. Singh liked. When Gopalakrishnan suggested the name Bharat Nirman for this clutch of programs, Dr. Singh readily agreed with a smile. Young officers in the PMO like V. Vidyarthi and Amitav Agarwal were equally committed to the UPA's development agenda. The PM's PS Subbu also worked with the Digvijay Singh's government in Madhya Pradesh before opting for Chhattisgarh when the state was divided, and had taken keen interest in the work of the NGOs in rural development in both the states, as well as in Manipur where he had briefly served. Vidyavati belonged to the Karnataka cadre of the IS and Agarwal to the Chhattisgarh cadre. This was a core team that monitored the implementation of the NCMP. When the idea of rural employment guarantee scheme traveled to the PMO from the NAC and Rural Development Ministry, it was received enthusiastically by Dr. Singh, who was familiar with Maharashtra's early initiatives in this regard. Maharashtra had, from the time of Sharad Pawar's tenure as Chief Minister, implemented the Maharashtra Employment Guarantee Scheme (MEGS). Though conceptualized in 1977 during Vasant Dada Patil's tenure as Chief Minister, MEGS was launched by Pawar in 1979. As the Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission in the 1980s, Dr. Singh has studied the scheme and been impressed by it. He was in favor of implementing this program at a national level, and the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act (MNREGA) was nothing more than a variant of the MEGS. The so-called differences on the Manrega between the PMO and the Finance Ministry on one hand and the NAC on the other related mainly to the financial implications of the program, with estimates of how much it would cost the exchequer varying from 1 to 3% of the national income. Neither Dr. Singh nor Chidambaram wanted an open-ended fiscal commitment, since the benefits of the program were to be based on self-selection. That is, only a person seeking employment under the Manrega would be offered it for the number of days and at the wage specified. This would mean that at the beginning of the year, the government would not know how many would come forward to seek the benefit. The Minister for Rural Development, Dr. Raghuvansh Prasad Singh, a one time physics professor and a genial grassroots politician for whom Dr. Singh had high regard and great affection, played an important role as a bridge between the fiscal conservatives and the populace. Raghuvansh Prasad looked rustic with a scraggy, unshaven appearance, always sporting a well worn dhoti and not the starched, crisp white dhotis that most politicians normally wear. His English was scratchy, but his knowledge of the subject he was handling was superb. Unlike many other cabinet ministers who left to their secretaries to brief the PM on policy issues concerning ministries, Raghuvansh Prasad would make his own presentations. He understood the PM's fiscal concerns and worked towards a fiscally responsible program. Raghuvansh Prasad was one person Dr. Singh would have loved to induct into his Council of Ministers in 2009 but could not because of parting ways between the Congress and Lalu Prasad's RGD, of which Raghuvansh Prasad was the senior leader. On several occasions, I could sense the irritation of the Congress party propagandists who claimed credit for the MNREGA in the name of Sonia and later Rahul, but never gave Raghuvansh Prasad credit for his stellar work on it. The Congress party's obsession with giving the entire credit for the Manrega to the Gandhi family reached a point where it may have embarrassed the family. When I tried to correct that impression, I found myself in a spot of trouble. On 26 September 2007, shortly after he was appointed as one of the party's general secretary, Rahul Gandhi led a delegation of all the party general secretaries to greet Dr. Singh on his birthday. After the courtesies of tea and dhokla were done with, the delegation settled down to a discussion on policy issues. At the end of the meeting, Sonia's political secretary Amit Patel handed out a statement about the meeting requesting me to release it to the press. The statement claimed that Rahul Gandhi had urged the PM to extend the scope of Narega. This was done before it was named after Mahatma Gandhi and consequently became Manrega to all the 500 or rural districts in the country. Until then, it was being implemented only in the 200 of the most backward districts. I told Patel that it was not the practice of the PMO to issue press statements on behalf of those who had visited the PM, and that I would draft a statement of my own stating that delegation of party general secretaries led by Rahul had come to greet the PM on his birthday. As for the political context of the statement, it was better I suggested that it came in a separate statement from the party office. Later that evening, Shishir Gupta, a senior political journalist at the Indian Express, called me to find out if Dr. Singh had accepted Rahul's suggestion and whether Narega would now be extended to the entire country. I reminded Shishir that the Prime Minister had already stated his commitment to, to doing so in his Independence Day speech the previous month and that the PMO was in discussion at this very point with all the ministries of rural development and finance. That evening, all TV channels dutifully reported the Congress party statement that Rahul had asked the PM to extend the Narega to the entire country and the next morning's papers did the same. Only the Indian Express made the additional remark in its dispatch the next day. Sources said that the issue had been on the PMO radar even before Rahul's elevation to the party post. The principal secretary to the PM had already discussed the issue with officials from the Finance Ministry, Rural Development Ministry, and Planning Commission almost 2 weeks ago. Raghuvansh Prasad had, in fact, been the original enthusiast in favor of extending the employment program to the entire country, and he was amused when he found himself upstaged by a Congress party now claiming that this was Rahul's idea. But he sportingly went along with the Congress party spin, confining himself to telling a few reporters from his home state Bihar that it was he who had been pushing the Finance Ministry and the Planning Commission to extend the program. I sent an SMS half in jest to a journalist who wanted to know more about the program's national rollout that this announcement was the PM's birthday gift to the country. After all, if Sonia or Rahul had been PM, that is precisely how the party strategists would have spun out an announcement on the leader's birthday. It later transpired that this SMS had made the rounds and reached the party leadership. One leader told the senior editor, "What does Baru think? He thinks Dr. Sahib can win us elections. We have to project Rahul's image, and this kind of SMS does not help." When I heard this, I knew I was in trouble. Sure enough, I was summoned by the PM for a dressing down. As I entered the antechamber of his room, Nair, Narayan, and Pulak were walking out. Noting that all three scrupulously avoided eye contact with me, I realized that this was going to be serious. As when I went in, Dr. Singh was seated, arms folded and wearing an angry look. "Did you send an SMS to journalists that the expansion of Narega is my birthday gift?" I said I did, but half in jest. I pointed out that the Independence Day speech had already reiterated the government's commitment to expanding it. Even conceding that Rahul had taken things forward by demanding an early rollout, the decision had indeed been taken on the PM's birthday. The PM sat stiffly in stony silence. I broke the silence by adding, "The party wants to give the entire credit of for this decision to Rahul, but both you and Raghuvansh Prasad deserve as much credit." "I don't want any credit for myself," he snapped. He was still red with anger. "Sir, it is my job to project your image and secure the political credit due to you. Let the party do that for Sonia and Rahul. I have to do this for you." "No," he snapped again. "I do not want you to project my image." There was dead silence in the room after that. I just sat there in that room. After several minutes of silence, Doctor's tense face and body relaxed. In almost a paternal tone, he admonished me. Why do you do these things? I did not respond. After many seconds of deafening silence, the PM said, let them take all the credit. I don't need it. I'm only doing my work. You just write my speeches for me. I do not want any media projection. He then stood up and I left the room. It was the second time I had got a scolding from him, a decade and a half after being pulled up for those editing mistakes in ET at 30 special edition. But this time it was serious. I was told, in essence, to stop doing the work I had been hired to do so. Clearly, the blowback from the party and its first family might have been serious enough to warrant this. I did not actually stop projecting the Prime Minister after this. Events themselves demanded it, like his success in negotiating and delivering the nuclear deal. However, this episode left me with a depressing awareness of the limitations of my job as Dr. Singh's spin doctor. I felt less free after this than I had been before. One populist initiative for which Dr. Singh was happy to take credit was the farm loan waiver of 2008. Finance Minister Chidambaram had, in his budget speech of February 2008, announced a plan to write off loans taken by small and marginal farmers across the country. A great deal of thinking and homework had gone down into that announcement. All through 2007 and the early part of 2008, Dr. Singh had wrestled with the issue. He understood only too well that the Congress party had come to power on the back of the farmer distress. Several measures had already been taken to provide support to cotton farmers in Andhra Pradesh and Maharashtra, states that had seen a distressingly large number of suicides by farmers. The farmers who had committed suicide were, for the most part, not the most impoverished or the landless. They were land-owning farmers who had been crushed by debt. On the other hand, mainstream economists had always viewed loan waivers as fraught with moral hazard. Periodic waivers encourage debtors to default on payments in the hope that such defaults are regularized. However, Dr. Singh was not just an academic economist. His understanding of the Indian farm economies was profoundly shaped both by his historical experience in Punjab, by macroeconomics of Keynes and Keynesians in India, such as K. N. Raj, and his own involvement in policy making through the Green Revolution years of the 1970s. It was about Punjab that Malcolm Darling, a distinguished British civil servant in the undivided Punjab of British India, had said in 1925, on the eve of a period of great distress in Indian agriculture, the Indian peasant is born in debt, lives in debt, and dies in debt. One evening in late 2007, after sitting through a long, inconclusive discussion on the subject of loan waivers with senior officials and ministers, Dr. Singh walked back to his private working space at 7 Asia. There, in that quiet room, looking out into the patch of green where a peacock or two would always be walking around, pecking at food. He sat and he gave me a long lecture on the history of loan waivers in India. It was the British, he explained, who at first understood the nature of rural indebtedness and the importance of keeping the farmer alive. Rural credit, he recalled Kane Raj telling him, is public good. Economists define public good as any good or service that, once provided, does not discriminate between beneficiaries and non-beneficiaries. A street light is a common example of a public good. Government spends money on street lighting, and everyone who uses the street, irrespective of whether she is a taxpayer or not, citizen or a visitor, benefits from it. A loan waived by a bank may appear to be a private good since the primary beneficiary is a debtor. However, in keeping farmers alive, in sustaining the livelihood of farmers, and in keeping rural social stability, a loan waiver in the case of an impoverished and highly indebted farmer would have wider social benefits. Many countries, including developed market economies, justified farm subsidies on such social grounds. A debt waiver was a subsidy and a public good. Dr. Singh recalled how every 30 years or so there had been a farm loan waiver in India, and the last one had been sanctioned by Charan Singh in 1979. The cycle of mounting debts and accumulating farmers' grievances would end with an across the board loan waiver. By 2007, he felt that the time had come for another loan waiver. The policy debate within the government went on for several months after that. It was possible that the party was not just mulling the decision but also decided to wait for the right political time. In Dr. Singh's mind, though, it seemed to me that afternoon the decision had already been taken. He understood that the political significance of a farm loan waiver. He had respected policy precedents and an acceptable theoretical justification of what would be criticized by many as a populist measure. Above all, for 4 years of high economic growth had generated the optimistic view that the country could afford to splurge on such schemes. After several months of deliberation and after taking stock of the views of an expert committee chaired by the economist R. Radhakrishnan, Dr. Singh approved the loan waiver scheme. Chidambaram unveiled the scheme through his budget speech in February 2008, including under it all agricultural loans disbursed by scheduled commercial banks, regional rural banks, and cooperative credit institutions up to March 31, 2007, and overdue as on 31 December 2007, with the benefit to small and marginal farmers, those with holdings up to 2 hectares being larger for other farmers. The scheme would benefit 4 crore, that is 40 million farmers, and would cost the government about 72,000 crores, that is 720 billion. Despite its high cost, Dr. Singh viewed the farm loan waiver as his contribution to inclusive growth. It was set apart in his mind from the flagship schemes for which his party gave all the credit to Sonia Gandhi, the NEC, and the NCMP. Still lurking within the Oxbridge economist was a bit of the Punjab farmer, and he knew that this initiative would resonate well in rural India. After Chidambaram's budget presentation, Dr. Singh took ownership of the initiative through a fervent reply to the debate on the motion of thanks to the president in May 2008 and recited from memory Oliver Goldsmith's lines from the deserted village. Ill fares the village to hastening ill a prey, where wealth accumulates and men decay. Princes and lords may flourish or may fade, but a bold peasantry, their country's pride, when once destroyed, can never be supplied. In 2008, at the end of 5 years of unprecedented 8 to 9% of economic growth, with the economy and the government revenues buoyant, such expenditure was seen as affordable. Despite the reservations of bankers and professional economists, there was growing concern that the government was committing itself to too many new subsidies and fiscal giveaways. Even the rural employment scheme was not explicitly tied to the creation of assets and an income stream that would help pay for a program on a sustainable basis. Even though he was enthusiastic about the loan waiver, Dr. Singh recognized that there would be fiscal price to pay. But as but his eyes, as indeed of the entire UPA leadership, were now on the next election, not on the government's fiscal bottom line. The loan waiver came on the back of massive investment in rural infrastructure and development through the Bharat Nirman, NREGA, and other programs. It also coupled with steep increases in the statutory minimum price paid for rice and wheat. Together, this was the new deal for rural India that Dr. Singh had promised in his 2004 Independence Day speech. It now remained for the Congress party to derive the electoral benefits of these initiatives, and the party did so in the summer of 2009. With rural development and the farm economy, while rural development and the farm economy was priority imposed by larger social, economic, and political considerations, the subject closest to Dr. Singh's heart was education. It was therefore particularly unfortunate that human resources development HRD portfolio went to a political adversary who neither shared Dr. Singh's interest in education nor his liberal values. Arjun Singh was given the HRD portfolio because for some reason that came to be seen as the most important ministry politically below Raisina Hill. Senior politicians left out of Raisina Hill, home to the ministers of defense, finance, home and external affairs, were traditionally accommodated in the ministries of agriculture, railways, and education. Rajiv Gandhi elevated the importance of this education ministry by combining all aspects of education, primary, secondary, and tertiary, uh, into one super HRD ministry. Narasimha Rao, India's first HRD minister, had a genuine interest in the subject, having started his political career as Minister of Education in Andhra Pradesh. But some of Rao's successors used the ministry for their own ends, especially the BJP's senior leader Murli Manohar Joshi, who used it to push in his Hindutva agenda, and Arjun Singh, who took upon himself the task of not just cleansing the ministry of its vast bureaucratic empire of Joshi's RSS legacy, but also promoting left wing academics and causes. In his own inclinations, Dr. Singh was not a leftist. His political career so far had not reflected any such ideological leanings. He had worked his way up to the political food chain in Madhya Pradesh politics, becoming the state's chief minister, leaving behind a string of allegations of corruption and mismanagement of the 1984 Bhopal gas leak tragedy. He moved to Delhi, positioned himself as a rebel, opposing Narasimha Rao's economic policies and ingratiating himself to the representatives of the Muslim community by demanding Rao resign over the hard handling of the Babri Masjid demolition in 1992. This was a political ploy. His secularism was as deep as that of an average congressman. With respect to Dr. Singh, to Arjun Singh's game was no different from that of the Prime Minister's other political rivals, namely to appear more pro left than the PM in the hope of ousting Dr. Singh with left support. While political analysts in the media focus more attention on Pranab Mukherjee's desire to be the PM, his links with the left and his political moves are with his links with the left and his political moves, Arjun Singh was far more active than Pranab ever in seeking to undermine the PM. Among the four senior ministers in the Union cabinet, the other two were Natwar Singh and A.K. Antony. Arjun Singh took the longest time to adjust to Dr. Singh's elevation. Arjun Singh used his perch at the HRD ministry to reinforce his image as a left wing secular politician, favoring and funding scholars and activities that helped him project this image. Whenever a journalist asked Dr. Singh of what he thought of Arjun Singh's political games at the HRD ministry, the PM's stock reply would be that India needed an education system that promoted excellence and merit rather than any particular ideology. By favoring pro-left and Muslim academics in various ways, he created a constituency of support among those who tended to be critical of the PM for following a foreign policy aimed, as they saw it, cozying up to the US, a country at odds with the Muslim world. Such was the sycophancy that he encouraged that Jamia Millia University even named a street on its campus after Arjun Singh while he was still in office. Understandably, Dr. Singh remained wary of Arjun Singh and took a long time to focus his energies on education, even though the subject was close to his heart. On the eve of a cabinet reshuffle in 2006, he seriously considered moving Arjun Singh out. I reported what Narasimha Rao had said to me, and I once suggested the idea of sacking Arjun Singh to him. Arjun Rao had recalled the American President Lyndon Johnson's response of why when asked why he did not sack his FBI chief Edgar Hoover, even though the latter was known to spy on the president and his colleagues, Johnson's frank response to the question had been, "It is better to have him inside the tent pissing out rather than outside the tent pissing in." Dr. Singh chuckled and Arjun Singh stayed on. More than a year into my tenure, I had my own little encounter with Arjun Singh's mind games. One day he saw me in the corridor and came out of the meeting with Dr. Singh in the PMO and stopped and smiled. I greeted him with a namaste. "You should come and see me sometimes," he said. I told Dr. Singh what had happened and he suggested with a smile that I should call on the minister. Next day I landed up at his office in Shastri Bhavan. He ordered a cup of tea, sat back in his chair and said nothing. I did not know what to say or do, so I broke the silence with small talk. Since the meeting was going nowhere, I thought I should use the opportunity to draw the minister's attention to an important policy issue. The Singapore government had invited India to locate a campus of the IIM, India's premier network of management institutions in that country, but the HRD ministry was opposed to the idea. The management guru Rama Bijapurkar had briefed me on the issue, and I was not clear why the ministry was opposed to the idea. Dr. Singh explained to me that the IIMs were prestigious Indian institutions, and if students from Singapore or elsewhere wanted to go to study at an IIM, they should come to India. Why should the IIM go to Singapore? He asked. I saw his point, but offered the counter argument that locating an IIM in Singapore would only enhance the institution's brand name rather than divert students away from it. I explained to him the concept of brand and branding. I pointed out that the demand for places at IIMs was far in excess of the availability to the IIMs, uh, far in excess to the availability, so the IIMs would never have to face the prospect of empty seats. Moreover, there might be many Indian origin management gurus in the US and elsewhere willing to move to Singapore and teach there rather than to move to India. Arjun Singh heard me out with a bored and disinterested expression. I decided it was time to go. I returned to South Block and briefed the PM about my meeting. He heard me without comment and went back to his work. 2 days later, my attention was drawn to a news report in an English daily published from Madhya Pradesh with the headline "PM reaches out to Arjun Singh." The report alleged that I had been sent as an emissary by Dr. Singh to reach out to him and seek his support and the assurance of his confidence in the leadership of the PM. It was Dr. It said Dr. Singh wanted to make sure that Arjun Singh was on his side. The report said that Arjun Singh had conveyed to the PM through his media advisor that news reports suggesting the HRD ministry had policy differences with the PM were untrue and had assured him of his support. I took the clipping to the PM and we had a good laugh. Dr. Singh did go on to pay attention to education in UPA too, dubbing the 12th 5 year plan as National Education Plan, ensuring the highest ever financial allocation to this sector and appointing the high profile lawyer and Congressman Kapil Sibal as his HRD minister in the place of Arjun Singh, who was finally dropped from the cabinet. However, in UPA 1, his hopes of breathing fresh air into the ministry, made moribund by Murli Manohar Joshi's whimsical leadership, could not be realized, with the equally whimsical Arjun Singh at his helm. Despite this limitation, the government managed to put some good programs, including the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, a university literacy program originally launched by the Vajpayee government, but for which Dr. Singh ensured a tenfold increase in budgetary allocation from 2,000 crores in 2004 to 20,000 crores in 2012. He insisted on funding several new central universities, IITs, and IIMs, and institutes of science education and research. My colleague Sanjay Mitra, who dealt with the HRD in the PMO, was an enthusiastic promoter of these initiatives. Mitra was from West Bengal cadre and had worked closely with Jyoti Basu, but unable to get a firm grip on Arjun Singh's HRD ministry, he could not ensure the effective follow-up of these projects. However, the South Asian University (SAU), a project dear to Dr. Singh, was poorly conceived and executed and will remain a blot on Dr. Singh's record in the field of education. While preparing for the Dhaka summit of the South Asian Regional Cooperation (SARC), Dr. Singh came up with the idea of starting a regional university that would enable bright minds uh, that would enable bright minds from South Asia to spend their formative student years together. He envisioned SAU as a center of excellence and the best university in the region. But for that vision to be realized, the university needed to attract top-notch South Asian faculty. Imagine if Nobel Prize winner Amartya Sen or the Abel Prize winner mathematician Srinivas Vardhan had encouraged to be its founding vice chancellor. Imagine that the eminent Indian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Sri Lankan, and other South Asian scholars constituted its founding faculty. That was Dr. Singh's dream, but it was never translated into reality. SAU's first vice chancellor, G.K. Chadda, earned the reputation of being a good administrator and the vice chancellor of JNU, but he was not internationally known scholar. He was just another friend of the PM from Punjab. SAU not only had enormous teething troubles, but it never managed to establish itself as the institution of regional, not to mention international excellence. A weak start may have killed a fine idea. One initiative in the field of education that Dr. Singh truly felt passionate was about his effort to increase and widen scholarships given out by the government. The first ever expansion of the government funded scholarships in India had happened during Dr. Singh's tenure. The government instituted new and better funded scholarships for students from scheduled caste and scheduled tribe families. There was a threefold increase in scholarships for Muslim students. There was a sevenfold increase in scholarship for girls and a new scheme of merit come uh, means scholarship was introduced for post-matric students, with 20 million students benefiting by the end of UPA 1. It is telling that the only initiative Dr. Singh was willing to lend his name as a prime minister was student scholarship instituted in his alma mater, Dr. St. John's College, Cambridge. The Manmohan Singh Scholarship was awarded to both undergraduate and doctoral studies. Every year, the awardees get to meet the PM, and he is always very happy on such occasions. The PM's personal passion for scholarships came from the fact that his life, as he once put it, was made of scholarships. Given his modest background, he would have never secured the kind of college and postgraduate education he did without scholarships. It was scholarships that enabled him to study both in India and then at Cambridge and Oxford. Some of Dr. Singh's warmest smiles have been captured at events where he's handing out a scholarship certificate or an award for excellence in education to bright young students. Nothing made him happier to see himself in the eager face of a young middle class student. Dr. Singh was always conscious of the fact that what enabled UPA 1 to step up spending was the unprecedented growth of economic activity in the period 2003 to 9. 50 years before independence, from 1890 to 1940, the national income of British India grew by a little over 0%. Between 1950 and 1980, the national income grew by 3.5% every year. Between 1980 and 2000, the rate of growth picked up by roughly an average of 5.5% every year. The near 9% rate of the growth recorded in 2003 to 2008 was unprecedented. Many explanations have been of, offered for this sharp improvement in India's growth performance. Clearly, the global economic and strategic environment was favorable to India. At home, the national savings and the investment rates went up sharply, and so did agriculture output and income generated by buoyant services sector. Finally, the stability of UPA 1 and the fact that Dr. Singh's team of economic policymakers, including P. Chidambaram, Montex Aluwalia, and C. Rangarajan, inspired investor confidence at home and abroad, combined to generate positive expectations that fueled growth. The, this acceleration of economic growth generated the revenues required to finance the government's social development programs, including Bharatiya Nirman, NREGA, and spending on health and education. Without the 8 to 9% growth during this period, the government could not have sustained its spending programs. It is this fiscal foundation that sustained the strategy of inclusive growth in UPA 1. What if the rate of economic growth were to slow down? What if the fiscal situation got out of hand? This always worried the PM, but as long as the going was good, and in the UPA it was, no one was really worried about the return of the fiscal constraint on growth. Thanks to high growth, UPA 1 managed to adhere to the timetable of deficit reduction imposed by the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act until 2009. Some of PM's advisors like Rangarajan worried that this period of rising income growth was not being used to improve government finances on a more sustainable basis and feared the consequences of such fiscal responsibility. But in UPA 1, there were few takers for such caution. When I left the PMO in August 2008, the performance of the economy was not a matter of any great worry. With 5 years of unprecedented high growth behind us, though a high fiscal deficit and inflation rate continued uh, to remain. Sorry. Yeah. Remained Let me repeat. When I left the PMO in August 2008, the performance of the economy was not a matter of great worry, but with 5 years of unprecedented high growth behind us, though a high fiscal deficit and inflation rate remained important concerns. The big picture gave confidence. India's national income, Chidambaram proudly claimed, had crossed the 1 trillion mark in 2008. With high investment rates, India was seen as catching up with the Asian tigers and on its way to match China's impressive performance. International conferences in New Delhi and Mumbai would discuss India's emergence as a global power, and Dr. Singh would get away with sermonizing to business billionaires about the need for social conscience. At the annual meeting of the Confederation of Indian Industry in May 2007, he made bold to suggest a 10-point social charter for businesses, including affirmative action in employment, attention to workers, health, and shunning of conspicuous consumption, and excessively high remuneration for top management. While the business media chided Dr. Singh for his socialist advice, business leaders took it sportingly well, since their overall mood, driven by healthy corporate bottom lines, was still positive. Against this backdrop, when the Lehman Brothers crisis hit Wall Street in mid-September 2008, and the transatlantic economies went into panic mode, the Indian government acted fast to boost investor confidence despite setbacks like terror attack on 26 November 2008 in Mumbai, in which 160 plus people were killed at hotels, restaurants, and a railway station. The government was able to boost confidence in India's relative insularity from the global financial crisis. The PM's quick response to the Satyam scandal, in which a major software services company admitted to cooking its books, enabled India to protect the company from collapse and boosted investor confidence in government policy. Even though Chidambaram had moved from finance to home in the aftermath of the terror attack in Mumbai, which led to the departure of the much criticized incumbent Shivraj Patil, the finance ministry was still alert to international developments and responded calmly. A new government at the Reserve Bank of India was still cutting teeth but was able to work closely with Delhi and manage the fallout. India's capable handling of the global crisis was positively commented upon around the world, and Dr. Singh's intervention at the meeting of the newly constituted group of 20 G20 heads of government in Washington, D.C. in November 2008 were much appreciated. These developments raise India's global profile and also the PM's. The UPA therefore ended its term with a satisfactory record of performance on the economic front. If there was one area of concern, it was fiscal. The government's many welfare and development programs, The various subsidy schemes and the farm loan waiver imposed a huge financial burden on the government that would increase with time. For someone whose favorite aphorism was money does not grow on trees, Dr. Singh presided over a government that had begun to spend money as if it was growing on trees. This became the Achilles heels of economic management in UPA 1, and that came to haunt the government in UPA 2. For all his talk about financial rectitude and despite his record as finance minister in 1991 to 93, when he did manage to sharply bring the deficit down as PM, he presided over a regime of fiscal irresponsibility given the pressure on the government to spend on a variety of programs. This despite the fact that he not only shared a good working equation with finance minister in the UPA 1 compared to the very formal relationship he had with Pranab Mukherjee in UPA 2, but also took much keener interest in budget making. He would insist Chidambaram sit with him and finalize the finance minister's annual budget speech. Pranav, on the other hand, would not even show him the draft of the speech till he finished writing it. While Chidambaram and he shared a common worldview on economic policy, the two did have differences and some were important ones. At the meeting convened to discuss a reduction in energy subsidies in 2007, the PM assumed that he would have the finance minister on his side. When while he had no problem getting the petroleum and natural gas minister Murli Deora on his side, a sharp contrast to the argumentative Manish Shankar Iyer who preceded Deora in that ministry, he was surprised to hear a lecture from Chidambaram on the middle class sensitivity to the price of cooking gas. The fiscal irresponsibility of UPA 1 was to eventually hit investor sentiment. It also contributed to inflation during the UPA's second term. Clearly, in UPA 1, while Dr. Singh had delivered on his promise of boosting growth and making it more inclusive, he had failed to deliver on ensuring the fiscal sustainability of growth. It was it is this fiscal overreach that came to haunt UPA 2 as the growth slowed down. It was a slowdown that nobody anticipated. The psychological impact of a slowdown on market sentiment was even greater because investors at home and abroad had come to take India's economic rise during 2003 to 8 for granted. Even though the Congress party rubbished India's BJP's India Shining campaign and sought to compensate for it with its spending schemes, it too assumed that Indian economy was on a roll. The rising rate of investments and the savings and the rising exports were seen as drivers of sustainable growth. So much so that some of the signs of the early policy paralysis that came to haunt UPA2 were not taken too seriously. One of them was the slowdown in the National Highways construction program. The Vajpayee government ensured speedy implementation of the program. However, some in the UPA, influenced by the left and a few NAC activists, came to view road construction as an elitist activity meant to please automobile owners and work on a highway slowed down to a crawl. Moreover, BJP's disinvestment program aimed at selling off or reducing the government's stake in public sector enterprises was halted. Despite creating new investment commission headed by industrialist Ratan Tata, there was no consistent strategy to increase the capital expenditure by the government. None of this made much of a difference to investor perceptions about India's growth prospects as long as the economy was on a roll. Even the transatlantic financial crisis of 2008-9 had limited impact initially on growth. Economist Shankar Acharya, who joined Dr. Singh's team at the finance ministry as economic advisor in the early 1990s, was one of the few consistent critics of the government's fiscal and economic policies. Even before this transatlantic crisis hit the economy in 2008, Shankar would keep warning the government that many of its spending and other policy decisions would cause the economy dear. Every time Shankar's column appeared in the Business Standard, I would mark it to the PM. But for a long time, Shankar was viewed as a pessimist needlessly who was needlessly ringing the alarm bells. In the end, it was not due to global economic slowdown. Shankar was proven right. It was not just due to a global economic slowdown. Shankar was proven right. When the UPA2 government became paralyzed by a political storm in 2010-11 over explosive financial scandals, many of the inherent weaknesses of the economy built up due to the creeping populism of UPA1 surfaced and took their toll. By then, Dr. Singh had lost control of fiscal policy and much else. In March 2012, he was not even aware till the day before the budget was going to be presented that his finance minister Pranab Mukherjee was going to introduce a new corporate tax policy with retrospective effect that would have a disastrous consequence for investor sentiment. For a man whose professional reputation was built by his role in battling hyperinflation of the mid 1970s, reining in the fiscal deficit in the 1980s, and restoring growth momentum to the economy around 2005 and 6, Dr. Singh, by end of UPA2, was still battling inflation, still trying to get the fiscal deficit down, and still pushing for a revival in growth momentum. With this, we come to the end of chapter 8, and just a few things to unpack from this chapter. The first is the slew of policies that were unveiled during Dr. Manmohan Singh's tenure. A lot of them had to do less with the capabilities of the Congress ministers and more to do with Dr. Manmohan Singh and an RJD minister, Raghuvansh Prasad. Raghuvansh Prasad played a very stellar role uh, in developing the rural employment guarantee act, which was then called NREGA, and then with Mahatma Gandhi's name added, it became Mahatma Gandhi uh, Rural Employment or MNREGA. And this act ensured that there was employment opportunities for daily wage earners in 200 of the most backward districts or towns or cities, how you call them, of India. Now, uh, this became a success, and immediately the Congress bandwagon jumped on it, with full credit being given to Rahul and Sonia about it. On the Prime Minister's birthday, Rahul Gandhi came in with a group of Congress uh, workers and met him, and he wished him on his birthday, and he gave a proposal where the Manrega could be extended to 500 places instead of the 200 that it was there. And immediately, Ahmed Patel, who was Sonia's political secretary, asked Sanjaya to approve a press release saying that Rahul Gandhi had requested the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister was considering it. Sanjaya kind of took one step back, and he said that it is not the PMO's policy to issue statements on behalf of people who have visited the PMO, and if there was something to be done, that had to be done at the party's end. However, he would issue a statement saying that uh, the the Congress Party General Secretary Rahul Gandhi, and other Congress workers came and wished the PMO with the Prime Minister on his birthday. Later, when journalists were needling him, Sanjaya kind of in jest mentioned that um, since it was the Prime Minister's birthday, it was a gift from him to the nation, the Manrega extension to so many places. And this immediately was picked up by the news channels, and it became a newsy item. And that kind of irked both Rahul and Sonia, and obviously upset Manmohan Singh. So this was the second time in maybe 15 years that Sanjaya got a lot of scoldings from Manmohan Singh. The first was when he made the ET at 30 edition, and forgot to, or rather missed out, including some of the comments by Dr. Singh's, by which Dr. Singh had very judiciously written down, asking him to add in the interview as his inputs. Now, obviously, Sanjay did not feel that he had done anything wrong, but he understood the magnitude of the decision. He also mentioned to Dr. Singh that he had sent that SMS only in jest, and he did not mean that it was meant to be Manmohan Singh's birthday gift to the nation. But uh, yeah, so that happened. Uh, so the point here was that because it became a success, Rahul Gandhi kind of made it as though it was completely his decision and he had implemented it, which Sanjaya found laughable because it was completely Dr. Manmohan Singh and Ranjan Prasad, Raghuvanshi Prasad, sorry, who later was not part of the Council of Ministers because he was not a Congress party member. He was from RJD, and Lalu Prasad had split ways with Congress and was not part of the government. So it irritated the prime minister to no end when he was not given any credit, and the Congress leaders kept giving credit to Rahul Gandhi. But then that's politics, and life went on. Uh, the rest of the chapter kind of talks about many more such policies issued by Manmohan Singh. A lot has been talked about the loan waiver scheme. Every 30 years, governments step in and waive off loans, waive off loans, so that the farmers can go back to their lives, and the whole uh, uh, suffering of farmers due to their debts is removed, and they can go back to uh, their farming. uh, Dr. Singh was very, very clear on how he would handle it, and and the chapter kind of talks a little bit about that in detail, especially about how they found success in Maharashtra, and that success was taken to Maharashtra and Andhra Pradesh were the two states where a lot of farmers committed suicide, and therefore there was a policy drafted way back in Maharashtra under Vasant Dada Patil, but it was only implemented by Sharad Pawar in 1979. And seeing the success of it somewhere, that was taken, and that was brought in by Dr. Singh across India. What else is there in this? Yeah, he talks about his workings in terms of uh, drafting the three major speeches where Dr. Singh felt laid the foundation of any decision made by his government. One was the NCMP, which as the council of ministers, or the national common minimum program, which is decided uh, before his government came into power. He obviously was not very happy with some of the compromises that Congress made, because the Congress wanted to rein in the left, and the NCMP had therefore made a lot of commitments which were very left friendly, very not market friendly. But then you have to live with it, and so that was one. Second was whatever uh, the president would pass in terms of the acts that he had that they had recommended. And the third and the most important was the speech of the finance minister. And for the speech of the finance minister, he had two different finance ministers. First was Chidambaram, with whom he had a very good working relationship. They drafted the finance minister's speech together. They worked very closely together. Chidambaram later was moved out from finance to home when the November attacks, 26 November attacks happened. And in UPA 2, it was Pranab Mukherjee who never gave Dr. Singh a lot of respect, because he had this baggage that Dr. Singh was used to report to him when he was the finance minister, and Dr. Singh was the governor of RBI in the early 90s, and now he has become uh, the finance minister's boss, which is Pranab Mukherjee's boss. Pranab Mukherjee also, along with Arjun Singh, was one of the aspirants to the prime minister's post, so they were constantly looking at that. uh, and therefore it reached also UPA 2 also for Dr. Singh reached a stage where he had completely lost control of many other things, and therefore for somebody who came from a finance background, a very renowned economist, some very crucial decisions related to the budget speech were not even revealed to him a day before Pranab Mukherjee was going to do. So that's how his relationship or his grasp on the Ministry of Finance deteriorated over his two terms, and there were many decisions which were not too correct, which were made in UPA 1, which only affected in UPA 2. Lot to do with the um, workings of the loan waivers and the policies that were suggested in UPA 1. I have not been able to pick out one or two from the chapter to tell you, but yeah, you'll have to read it to pull out the the examples very neatly. He's working with Arjun Singh, another minister who was an aspirant to become the prime minister, also has been detailed out very well. Arjun Singh was the HR minister. The problem with HRD ministry was before Congress came into power, Murli Manohar Joshi was the HRD minister. Under the BJP government used to push his RSS agenda in the textbooks, and Arjun Singh similarly also started pushing the left agenda in the textbooks, and this irritated Dr. Singh. Unfortunately, he couldn't do much about Arjun Singh, but luckily in the second term, Arjun Singh was kind of booted out, and that's how the story ends. With this, I think I come to the end of my unpacking um, of this chapter. One interesting snippet from his experience with Arjun Singh is the opportunity of having the Indian Institute of Management in Singapore. That I think was a very good decision. Arjun Singh said that why should we have Indian Institute of Management. So there was a proposal to get the IAMs in Singapore, which Sanjaya was convinced would give them a global profile. A lot of teachers and scholars would prefer to at least come and stay in Singapore, who might not prefer to stay in India, and therefore he was very convinced about it. Arjun Singh felt that if people want to study in IIMs, let them come to India. IIM should not go out of India, so that will kill the profile. And this is one thing. There's also one more, because education and the field of education is very close to Dr. Manmohan Singh's interest. There was a proposal of creating a SAU, which was a South Asian university among the SAARC nations. A lot of good work was being put in, a lot of thought was put in, but unfortunately it fizzled out. You have details of that in this chapter. Yeah. With this, I come to the end of this chapter. It is getting a bit more interesting. I'm starting to enjoy the book. Yes, it is a lot of painful detailing, boring read about the government's workings, but there are a lot of interesting snippets which I have started to enjoy. And I hope you are also finding it interesting. Do drop in your comments, your suggestions, and hit the like button, share your inputs, and subscribe if these audiobooks are to your interests. Thank you, and bye bye.